Okay, in the second section, and by the way, the number keeps growing, so it's good to see. Glad that you are here this morning. After this, are we eating? After this, what is the program? We're eating after this? Well, okay. So we're eating after this, so I will be sure to stop on time after this. If the food comes. All right, so the second session. The first session was about influence. Second session, we were going to be talking about creating positive change. Creating positive change. You see, the person in leadership position, no matter what that position might be, needs to understand that he is to effect change. And, change can be bad, but change can also be good. And change in a positive way is exactly what we're after. Now, you think about this in any context. If the man owns the business, he's wanting to change the business in that he wants to make more money, or he wants to open more locations, or you just whatever it might be. That's change, right? We have 3 locations, but I want 4. That's positive change. We've made this much money this year, but next year we hope to make more. That's what? It's positive change. And so the leader who is content to just rest at a certain level will not stay there. He will most certainly go down because he has become content. And in the church, we need to be thinking about positive change. There is always room to improve. The largest room in the house is the room for improvement. And it's the same in the church as well. And when you're through changing, you're through. When you're through changing, you're through. And we need to remember this. So, how can a leader create positive change? All right? That's our focus for the next few minutes. How can we how can we create change that is good and right and helpful and truly an improvement? We don't want to change just to change. We're talking about true positive change. All right, number 1, if you're going to affect positive change, you need to know why people resist change. You need to know why. That people naturally resist change. Is it true for you? Is it true in your country that people resist change naturally? It's a human trait. It is a universal trait. I have been to more than 50 countries on every continent except Antarctica. And I can tell you, people resist change. It is just a natural characteristic. That's not necessarily a good thing, but it is a natural thing. And if you're going to help people change for the better, it is helpful for you to know why they resist it. So let me suggest to you a few reasons why people resist change. And you will see that these things are true of you too. These are true of all of us. Number 1, one reason people resist change is if the change is not self-initiated. If it is not self-initiated, people resist it. People like to feel like they had some say-so in the change. I don't like when people tell me that something is going to be different in my life and I had no say-so in it. How about you? People don't like that. They resist that. They want to feel like they had some input into the change, into the decision. And so wise leaders will allow people to have input into the decisions that are going to affect them. They want to be a part of the process. You're the same way, right? You're the same way. We need to understand that that is normal. Another reason that people resist change is when their routine is disrupted. When their routine is disrupted. I have my routines. How about you? I get up when I'm home, I get up at the same time every morning. I do the same thing first, and then I do the second thing the same way, and the third thing, and so on. I generally take my coffee at the same exact time every morning. How about you? See, we have our routines, and we like them because they are comfortable. We know them. There's something about our routines that we embrace. And people don't like it when their routines are disrupted for any reason. It's just easier to follow the old habits. But sometimes change forces us to think. It forces us to reevaluate. It forces us to do things differently. It forces us to make some improvements. And so we sometimes resist because of that. It requires effort. It doesn't make it right, okay? I'm not saying these are legitimate reasons. I'm saying these are in reality reasons why people resist change, and you are the same way. And, as we talk about this, you put it into the context of your own leadership situations, okay? You go ahead and make those applications. I'm just telling you some general facts. A third reason that people resist change is because it creates fear of the unknown. It creates fear of the unknown. You see, change means we're going to be doing something different. And when we do something different, we don't always know what the outcome is going to be. And that creates fear. And some people are even more resistant to that than others. And so to avoid the unknown, they just refuse to make any changes. Those changes may be positive, they may be beneficial, but there's fear of the unknown. And so some people will resist the change because of that. And I think about churches. And how many times this has actually been the case where we don't want to do anything different than we've ever done before because we're just not exactly sure how it's going to work out. Sometimes those concerns need to legitimately be heard, but sometimes it's just nothing more than fear of the unknown that's keeping us from doing something different that could possibly be a benefit, could possibly be an improvement. Another reason that people naturally resist change is when the purpose of the change is unclear. When the purpose of the change is unclear. If you're suggesting that I need to do something different, but you cannot tell me why, I naturally resist that. How about you? I need a good reason. We're not talking about change for the sake of change. And the truth is, if we're talking about something that's different, but we cannot even articulate why, perhaps it's not time to make a change, right? So people resist change and all of the negative connotations about it, especially when they do not know why they are being asked to do something different or what it could possibly accomplish. And, I feel the same way, and I suppose you do as well. And so here's what you have to do. If you are in a leadership position and you are proposing something that's different, an improvement, a change, whatever, what are you going to have to do? You tell me, what are you going to have to do ahead of time? You're going to have to know it yourself and what? Communicate it clearly.
And if you involve the first principle, you have to try to get the buy-in.
Sure.
Get
Yeah.
the other person to feel a part of it.
Yeah. If there's no buy-in, either they will not do it or they will just resist. And there's this constant tension. So if people naturally resist change when they don't know why, and that's true, you have to remember that. You have to know that. Another reason that people resist change is because change creates fear of failure. I do what I do and it works. But now, if I have to do something else, I don't know if it will work. And the truth is, anything that's different might fail. That's true. I mean, that is a reality. I would also argue that never trying to improve is also failure. You just don't feel it because you're comfortable and you're satisfied. But if you're comfortable and satisfied and stagnant, like many congregations are, you're failing too. That's also failure. It's just a very comfortable failure, you see. But you need to understand that people don't, they sometimes resist change because they're afraid of failing. But I think the greatest mistake a person can make is being afraid of making a mistake. I mean, it's true. Okay, we're going to propose a new program in the congregation for the purpose of growth or making positive changes. Is it true it might fail? Yes, it is true. It is also true that if fear of failure always keeps us from doing anything that could improve, we are still failing as well. All right, another reason that people resist change is when they are too satisfied with how things are. When people are too satisfied, and that's a relative term, okay, but when they are so satisfied with the way things are, they will naturally resist change. We don't actually do anything until we see a good reason to do it. When the garbage can in your kitchen is sitting there and it finally is full, then what? Then you tell one of your children to take it out. Or you take it out. But not until then, right? Why? There's no reason. It's okay the way it is. But now it's not okay with the way it is. But just imagine that you're okay with it being completely full. Doesn't bother you, right? So even then, something needs to change, but you don't care because you're so satisfied with the way things are. And unless there is a healthy dissatisfaction, we don't do anything we don't have to do. The person steps on the scales and they see that number and it's bigger than it's ever been. Now what? Nothing, if it doesn't bother them. Hey, I feel good. If I hold my breath in, I can still snap my pants. So I'm okay. Right? I mean, isn't that human nature? But now I can't fit in my pants. And I don't feel good. Now what? I'm going to be cutting back. But only because I am dissatisfied with the way things are. It's human nature. And if you don't understand that, if I'm content with the way things are, I don't make any changes. You have to understand that. And so as a leader, if you're trying to help people see the need for positive changes, you have to be able to help them understand that, or help them feel that healthy dissatisfaction. Another reason that people resist change is because they lack respect for the leader. So here is one who is proposing a new program, who is proposing something that could be beneficial, but that person does not have the respect of the ones that are listening. And you need to understand that a person's ideas are tied to that person. Have you ever had this happen? I have. I will admit it. I will admit it freely. Have you ever had this happen? You're listening to a preacher, and what he's saying is right, but you don't like him, and you find yourself resisting everything he says? I have. And I know better. In my head, I know better. But I don't like that guy. And I find myself unconsciously pushing back at everything he says, even though if someone else had said it, I would be in complete agreement with it. Have you ever had that happen? Surely I'm not the only one. I hope not. I guess this goes back to level 2, doesn't it? So if people don't respect you, then they will not respect your ideas either. Next, I don't know what number this is, but people will resist change. Well, let me say it this way. Yes, people are going to resist change, but also the change is not likely going to be happening if the leader fears criticism. If the leader fears criticism, there's not going to be any positive change. Because the truth is, leaders sometimes are the ones who are resisting the change. There could be positive change made. Things could be better and different, but it's the leader, not the followers. It's the leader who fears something, and he fears criticism. What if this doesn't work? What if people don't like me after I propose this? What if? What if? What if? And so sometimes it's the one in the leadership position who has the fear, and it's fear of criticism. And so he needs to carefully evaluate where he's coming from and make sure that it's not his fear of criticism, his fear of failure that's holding things back. Next, people resist change because change may mean personal loss. Change may mean personal loss. Anytime anything different is proposed, people have one thing that instantly pops into their mind. One question instantly, naturally comes in. How will this affect who? Me. Isn't that right? How will this affect me? The government proposing maybe some tax changes. How is this going to affect me? Will I pay fewer taxes? Will I pay more taxes? I don't care about what everybody else is doing. I only care about how it affects me. And so anytime change is proposed, people automatically want to know how it's going to affect them. And usually there are 3 groups. 3 groups of people: those who will lose, those who will gain, and those who will remain unaffected. And people immediately begin to assess which of those groups they will be in anytime anything different is proposed. Which means that if you are proposing change, you need to know that. And you need to understand each group is different. You need to anticipate questions and concerns. You need to address those straightforward, but with sensitivity and kindness, understanding that what they are feeling is completely natural, and you would feel the same thing if you were in their shoes. Another reason that people resist change is change may require additional commitment. And this is similar to the previous one, but people, again, they immediately think, how will this affect me? And then if they conclude this will require more of me, then they are going to be perhaps resistant to it. In a leadership position, you have to evaluate if the follower is unable or simply unwilling to change. Could I do more? Yes. Will I do more? No. For some people, that is the answer. And it isn't easy sometimes to determine if they're unable or unwilling. That goes with the territory of being in a leadership position. All right, one more reason that people resist change: tradition. One word: tradition. This is the way we've always done it. And I'm thinking especially in the church. How many times have we heard that? Someone says, what if we do, oh, no, we've never done that before. We've never done that. We've always done it this way. And what they're saying is we don't want to change because of our tradition. It's funny though, there are some things we don't mind changing for. The first time someone has the opportunity to have an automobile, they don't say, well, no, I've never had an automobile. I've always walked everywhere I went. They don't say that, do they? Why? They immediately see the benefit. It's funny how there are things that we immediately would embrace, changes we would immediately embrace. Oh, I will put air conditioning in your house. Oh, no, I've never had air conditioning before. We don't say that. Well, when it comes to other things, we hold on to those traditions. Oh, we've never done it that way before. We've always done it this way. Well, we need to be consistent, right? If you're going to resist change based only on the way you've always done it, if that's the only reason, you understand we're not talking about doctrinal points here, right? That's not tradition. That's doctrine. We're talking about just the way we do things. Sometimes we resist because of tradition. I think there are some churches that are so afraid of changing, they would not even change a light bulb if it burned out. We don't change anything, We just let the burned out bulb stay in it because we don't want to change. So understand, people are resistant to change because of tradition. All right, so those are several reasons why people are naturally resistant to change. I imagine they sound very similar even to your own self, don't they? We're all human beings. We might look different, speak different languages, live in different places, but we're all created by the same Creator. And we all have these same built-in characteristics. And one of them is that we naturally resist change. So, the key point here is if you're going to help people to make positive changes, you need to know why they resist them so that you can anticipate those and help them to see the need to make some positive changes. All right, so number one, you need to know why people resist. Number two, this is the next section of this session today. How do we create a climate for change? How do we create an atmosphere that is receptive to making positive changes? That's our focus now. Creating a climate for change. Number one, the leader must develop trust in the people. If you are going to create a climate for change, I believe that it begins with the one who's making the proposed changes having belief and trust in the ones that he's asking to change. It is wonderful for people to trust their leader. But I think it may be even more wonderful when the leader trusts his people. Because that confidence that he has in them, that belief that he has in them, is going to come through. And you know, if we don't, do you know what is going to come through? The exact opposite. The exact opposite. And it's going to affect everything we do, even the way we communicate. So I think it begins with trust. Trust is the emotional glue that binds leaders and followers together. Trust. They trust the leader trusts them. And if you don't have that, then the relationship is not going to be one that will allow for creating positive change. Next, if you're going to create a climate for change, you also need to understand the history of the organization. You need to understand the history of the organization. Here's a principle that is true. This is a proven true principle. The longer an organization has gone without change, the more effort will be required in making any change. We talked about tradition. Well, the longer that tradition has been set in, the harder it will be to change it. October 27th. What is significant about that date to you? Exactly, Independence Day. How long has that been celebrated as Independence Day? 38 years. Now, what if someone says, no, we made a mistake. Actually, independence was obtained on October 2nd. How much effort is going to be required to get people to buy into that change? It may be impossible, right? I mean, it's been 38 years. But imagine it's been 200 years. See, the U.S. is July 4th, 1776. I don't know how many years that is, but it's a lot. And I can tell you, they actually have done research and found that those documents, those were signed on July 2nd. But it's been July 4th forever. Guess what? It will always be July 4th. It's not going to change. Maybe it could have changed after 1 year or two, but not now. You see what I'm saying? The longer an organization has gone without change, the harder it will be for them to make change. That's why you have to understand the history of the organization. And it's important to know what has happened in the past before you attempt to make changes in the future. What if this proposed program was tried 10 years ago and it failed? But you don't know that. You're at a disadvantage. You have to know the history of the organization. Somebody said, don't take down the fence until you know why it was put up. You see, you have to understand that, and if you do not, you are at a disadvantage. Next, if you're going to create a climate for change, you need to get the support of influencers before the change is made public. Obviously, we're talking now, especially in a church setting, but I think it applies to every leadership setting. You need to have the support of key people before this proposed change is made public. You want as many influential people on board as you can have. Let me make this point at home. You're the father, you're the husband, you're the father, and you tell your children, we've got these new rules. But your wife is unaware you've made this decision. And so when you tell the children these new rules, it's the first time she has heard them. And you tell the children, and she looks like, what are you talking about? Uh-oh. You already have problems. You see that other person who is equally involved, equally important, equally influential, isn't on board. Not yet. It isn't that she could not have been, but she isn't. And not only that, she may actually be resistant to the change because she's offended that you propose this without her influence. You see what I'm saying? It was completely unwise. He should have said to her, hey, I'm thinking about, what do you think? They get together, they announce it, and together they're on board. Well, you think about it in a church setting. You don't have all the answers. It's amazing how sometimes something in my mind is perfect. I mean, it's my idea. It's perfect. We are very fond of our own ideas, aren't we? They're like our children. And we think they are perfect, but sometimes they aren't. And you know, sometimes people can help us see potential problems. They can help us see potential improvements. And they can help us learn. And so that's just another reason that we should share these things with key influencers. And maybe we're in the wrong. Maybe this is not something to try. Maybe they can help us improve it. But regardless, if they are on board also, before this is made public, then people are going to be more open to the change that is being proposed, even though they naturally resist change. All right, one more. If you want to create a climate for change, show people the benefits of change. You remember that this point actually hits on several of the reasons people resist change. If they don't know why, they don't know what's in it for them, they don't know how they will be affected. There are several points that this one hits at one time. And so if you can, instead of having people wonder why, how will I be affected, will this change, you go ahead and you put those benefits out there in the beginning. The psychology that is involved is very basic. If you want to help someone see the benefit for it, you have to show them the benefits for it. Because everybody asks, what's in it for me? How will I be affected? Well, tell them, show them, and explain not only about how it will affect the individual, but the group as a whole. Because some of the changes, especially in church, will affect me in a way that requires more, and I'm naturally resistant to that. But if I can see that it's going to help the group, then I'm willing to forego that resistance and get on board. Don't we do that? Sometimes we're willing to make personal sacrifices to do something that will help the group. But again, I have to see the benefits or the possible benefits of it before I'm willing to get on board. And again, if you are proposing change and you cannot effectively communicate the benefits, you need to wait. Because if you don't know them, they certainly do not know them either. And it's not going to happen. It's not going to work, and it will fail. All right, so let me wrap this up by giving you one short story. This is a true story of how some of these things came into play. Church I was preaching for, the elders were considering swapping the times on Sunday. For example, we had Bible class at 9 o'clock and worship at 10 o'clock. That's scriptural, right? I mean, that's what the first century church did, 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock. What times do you meet here? See, there you go. You're scriptural. All right. I suspected you were scriptural. Well, they were thinking, if we have worship at 9, because here's what happens. You have more at worship than at Bible class, right? Is that the same here? Yeah. In fact, maybe sometimes many more at worship than at Bible class because they don't think that's. So they'll come for worship and then they'll already be there. They'll stay for Bible class. And I know churches that do this, and they certainly have a much higher attendance at Bible class because people will come for the worship and then they will stay for the class. So they were considering doing that. That's change. Tradition says we've never done that before. Right? Also, that person who doesn't normally come to class, what are they thinking? I have to get up an hour earlier. You know they're thinking that, right? All right, so you have to understand what's going in. And so what they chose to do, they made an announcement to the congregation. This is what we're thinking. This is why we are thinking it. And we also want your input. Remember, people resist change when they feel like they have no say-so. So I think they handled it in a very wise way. Considering that this was tradition, considering it would require an additional level of commitment from some people, considering that people want say-so, they chose to invite input from the congregation. Now, if they had just stood up on Sunday and said, next week we're making this change. Now, you know people well enough to know, how would that have been received? No explanation given, no possible benefits given, just this is what we're going to do. People would resist it. And worse, some would be angry about it. But they opened it up, they showed the benefits, they asked for input, and they received the input. At the end of the day, at the end of the process, they decided to not make the change, which I think, based on what I knew about it, probably was the wisest thing to do. But the fact that the change wasn't made, I think, still makes for us a good case study, how in the church we can do things perhaps in a better way. And so you have to know why people resist change, and you need to be able to create a climate that is welcome to and open to making positive changes, even though we naturally resist change. People resist change, but that doesn't mean they will not change, right? I mean, how many of you have changed? We all have. And we're still changing for the better, I hope. And you're never too old, individual or organization, never too old to be continually improving. And ultimately, as a leader, you must be able to create positive change. All right, questions, comments? And bear in mind, the food is here. I saw the food. I think that was food, right? I saw the food. I think maybe I can even smell it. So keep that in mind with the questions and comments. Yes, over here. Well, I don't know. The question he's asking, do we have to wait until we're dissatisfied? One of the jobs of a preacher, I'm going to use that example, is we have to create a dissatisfaction where sometimes one does not exist, but should exist. So sometimes we need to not be satisfied. Someone has said the role of the preacher is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comforted. Sometimes we are too comfortable, we are too satisfied. And as a messenger of God's word, we need to create a desire to do better, to do more, to improve. And that requires me being dissatisfied with the way things are, but in a positive way, which means I'm going to do something about it. And I think that's ultimately the one of the primary roles that we would have in a leadership position in the church, is to help people not be satisfied with how things are, but not just that, how we can improve and how we can do better. That's what I call positive dissatisfaction. Negative dissatisfaction says it's not good. We fold our hands and we sit down and we give up. Positive dissatisfaction says it's not the way it should be, so this is what I'm going to do. And ultimately we have to create that. I can't speak for you. I live perpetually dissatisfied. And that, I don't mean that in a negative way. I am perpetually dissatisfied with myself. I feel like I know where I still need to improve. I can look back and see where I've come from, but even in every aspect of life. And I hope we're the same way in the church. Not complaining, not dissatisfied in the sense we sit down and do nothing, but in the situation that we realize there's always room for improvement. And we're not negative about it. Oh, some preachers are so negative. And everything they say is negative. We need to do better. You need to do better. We're not big enough. Well, stop telling me what's wrong only and help me see what I can do to make it better. And if you're preaching and you're just negative, you're hurting the cause. Yes, in the back and then over here. Yeah, you could almost write a book to answer those questions. And there's no way you can say that every case is going to get the same answer. For example, when the elders decided to not swap the service times, it was based only on two people. They were an older couple. They were both in their 80s, and everybody knew them. They're not just resisting. They're not being ornery. But it was going to be very difficult for them. The reason they didn't come to class anymore, they used to. They were always in class, but they reached a point in their health. They were only coming for worship. And they decided, in the interest of those two people alone, we're going to leave it as it is because we don't want them to now be negatively affected. So that entire change was taken off the board for two people. Now, I'm also going to say you're never going to get unanimous decision on everything, and I would almost always say I'm not going to take it off the table because of two people. But sometimes that's the wise thing to do, you see. And so that's why I say there's no way you can give the same answer for every set of circumstances. What you can do, though, and this again is understanding how people are, when I'm making this proposed change, and I know that people are evaluating how's this going to affect me, but also knowing that some people, when they see the benefit for the group, they're willing to make a sacrifice, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to say, no, I know not everyone is immediately going to be for this, but I would hope that you would understand how this is going to benefit the group and that you would be willing to sacrifice and make some changes because it's going to benefit other people. You see, I'm going ahead and I'm answering their objection before they can even make the objection. You see what I'm saying? So I can't answer those questions with an exact same way every circumstance, every situation. But everything has to be taken case by case and things evaluated. And sometimes it's not a matter of right and wrong. In fact, it's usually not. The decisions between right and wrong are sometimes the easiest. It's the decisions between good and maybe better. And what is better, those are the decisions that are hard to make sometimes. So it requires wisdom. That's why also, if you're wise, this is not just you. So, okay, you're the preacher. There's 30 members in the church. You don't have elders, but there's a couple of men that you trust. Maybe there's a couple of ladies. You respect their wisdom. You know they've been a solid member of that congregation. And you say, hey, privately, I've been thinking about, what do you think about? We talked about getting the key influencers on board. That's what I'm talking about. Because not only do you want them on board if this is the right decision, you want them to help you see this isn't the right decision if it isn't before you go public. Because now your credibility is at stake. And the next time, so you propose something that is a total bomb. It's just awful. It just doesn't go anywhere. The next time you propose something, guess what? People remember that last time. You've lost some credibility. So don't try to go alone. There's no reason to go it alone. Seek the wisdom from those around you, and use your best judgment. Also, let me say this: don't be so stubborn. You have to get your own way. We're like that, aren't we? This is my idea. I know it'll work. We're going to do it. And we become married to our idea. And we won't let it go. We're going to, just because we're going to get it done. That's not the wisest thing either, sometimes. Especially when we're talking about something that's not a matter of right and wrong. You had a question? Yeah, well, we do need to be doing that. We need to be assessing, but it's going to have to be the leader who takes that initiative, because typically people do not assess. We just do what we do, and we just keep doing it. And many people will not assess it on their own. And so, and again, there's a million different scenarios in which this could be applied, but the leader, again, is going to have to be the one who proposes the assessment. And, with assessments, there have to be objectives, there have to be some parameters, how are we going to even assess what it is we're doing? But, for example, last night we talked about evangelism, and someone made the point that we don't even have any programs many times. But that's a pretty easy assessment to make, right? We're doing nothing. Anything would be better. So, we've been doing this. I was just talking to an elder this week, and they've been sending out this mailing. They've been sending this for outreach purposes. They've been sending it for 7 years now. It's costing them a pretty good bit of money, and so far they've not seen one single result from it. No, let me say it this way: there's been no one who has come to them and studied and been baptized in 7 years. So they're talking about maybe we can use these resources in a better way. So see, that's what we call assessment. But again, that has to be those in the leadership position that are proposing that assessment. Otherwise, people tend to just keep doing what they've always been doing. Yes. No, exactly. And we talked about getting others involved. We're talking about developing other leaders. Well, what if, okay, you have this idea, and you talk to this guy, and he's one of the key influencers, and he buys in as well. What's wrong with him being in charge of this? Probably nothing. You don't have, just because it's your idea doesn't mean you have to be in charge of it. Maybe he's actually better qualified. By the way, what you're talking about with the PR, ultimately that's one thing: communication. It's about communication. And communication and the importance of it is a very biblical concept. So we're also entrusting this to this man. Now we're helping him develop as a leader. He's got a whole different set of people perhaps who respect him, and maybe he's got influence with some others that you don't have as much with. See what I'm saying? Just because it's our idea doesn't mean it has to be our baby. But back to your point, communicating is so important, and it's where we fall down sometimes. And again, if we don't answer the objections when we make this proposal, if we do not make clear the benefits, and at the same time anticipate the objections and answer them, we have set ourselves up for failure. And then we fail, and then we say, oh, the church doesn't care. Nobody cares anymore. Boy, back in the 60s, they would have cared. No, maybe it's not that. Maybe I just failed to communicate very well. Right. I totally agree. And it's interesting you use that that point, because I've had the same thing. We have gospel meetings as well, and I'm told in the past they were very successful because there were a lot of non-Christians there, and those people could hear the first principles and learn what they didn't already know. But the reality is, and this is what I had to do some assessing of where I was preaching, and I went to the elders and I said, I know we're doing this, but here's what I'm seeing. The gospel meetings are just us. And so for 5 days, some man comes and tells us why we need to be baptized. And everyone there has already been baptized. What if we just go ahead and admit this thing called a gospel meeting? By the way, non-Christians don't know what that means. Gospel has something to do with church, I think. Meeting. I've got meetings at work and I hate those things. You know what I'm saying? See, we assume people know what that means. We don't use the term revival because we're afraid we might sound denominational. So instead we use a name that people don't even understand. This is what I'm saying about assessing ourselves. I mean, I'm thinking, if I'm not a member of the church, I don't even know what it means when I read gospel meeting. I don't know about your setting, your culture, but I'm telling you from mine. So I said to my elders, what if we just go ahead and admit the gospel meeting is just us, and we ask the speaker to keep that in mind. Give us things that are going to encourage us, strengthen our faith, those kinds of, not necessarily why I need to be baptized. And what if we also, once a year, have something that is designed to attract the attention of those who are not yet members of the church? A seminar on home and family. You know how many people are interested in that? A lot of people. I regularly do in the U.S. a money management seminar. In fact, I'm doing one next week in near Cincinnati. All biblical principles of managing money, and it's all here. And people are amazed. That's in the Bible. But every time we do it, there are non-Christians from the community who come because their friends who are members of the church invite them, and it's something they're interested in. One of the sessions is on digging out of debt. Do you know how many people are interested in getting out of debt? So this is an opportunity to invite them to something that's going to benefit them, something that's going to introduce them to the church, something that's going to get them in the Bible, and now maybe we're going to make some connections. So anyway, saying all that to say, we ended up going in that direction. We didn't give up gospel meetings because our members needed something, but we also chose to do something else we had never done before for that reason. So I think I spoke longer than I wanted to about that because now the food is getting cold, but I think that's a good illustration of what I'm talking about. You need to be assessing, but then also when you make these changes, so I wasn't proposing the changes to the congregation. I was proposing the changes to the elders. But I went in there knowing, what were the benefits? How can we improve? How is this going to benefit us? And I know if we say we're just going to get rid of gospel meetings, there's going to be a major objection. And so we're not going to do that, but instead we're also going to add this. Okay, well, I've enjoyed this session. I hope you have as well. I'm going to really enjoy the next session, which is the lunch. And then after that, we'll come back. And, when you come back, I know you will have just eaten. And I know it's going to be a struggle for you. So just try to get some exercise or drink some coffee or something.